Thanks, Pierre and Sage and Eric. Now we're going to hear from a friend of Richard's, Rona Bazonsky.
As has been said so many times before me, Richard was an eternal fountain of creativity, kindness, and side-splitting humor. I suggest that we all listen regularly to his favorite radio show from 1945, The Bickersons, to keep from sinking into a well of self-pity for our enormous loss. It would also be wonderful if we could continue to keep abreast of performances by Steve, Pierre-François, Robin, and the wonderful musicians today in order to stay in touch with his genius and joy. Since 1985, my family and I were blessed to have this incredibly funny, entertaining Renaissance man at our Friday night dinners, holidays, and family celebrations. And we asked ourselves, how does he do it all? Even with a wonderful Kathy Tsagaroulis to brush cat hairs off him every morning at work and to remind him to get a haircut regularly. Jazz musician and composer, klezmer musician, editor of volumes on psychopathology and music, psychoanalyst and coordinator of conferences and symposiums, such as the annual Wonderful Psychopathology and Creativity sessions, director of 2 very different film series, etc., etc., etc. But among his dizzying varieties of interests and roles, supervising his PhD interns was the closest to his heart. I want to emphasize that his major life commitment was to his students who were his de facto beloved offspring and friends. He was incredibly proud to be the co-director of what I understand was the only psychoanalytically oriented PhD internship for psychologists in Canada. And these students I know, because we saw him every week, they kept in touch, in close contact, over decades and enormous distances. Time, demographics, and life changes were not impediments to their mutual devotion and commitment. All of this is sufficient cause to mourn and salute Richard. But what many will remember most about Richard is his genuine, far-reaching kindness. Exhausted and at times ill himself, he took time to help people who were isolated, destitute, stranded, or ill. He never talked about it. There are too many stories on which to elaborate. Young international musicians he inspired and supported, and many out-of-town province friends whom he assisted with elderly parents, always with humor and goodwill. I will now read just one letter out of many from California. Tribute to Richard Karmel, Heather Abbey, friend in Los Angeles, California. Richard was a close, beautiful friend of mine, a special, unique man with many varied talents and interests. He was an ambitious, true scholar and became an accomplished psychoanalyst. He loved treating his patients and in so doing instilled lightheartedness and humor into the sessions. He was a wonderful musician, not only an accomplished saxophone and clarinet player, but a fabulous songwriter and composer as well. He composed all the music for the CD Vistas do Rio, a Brazilian jazz project. He was co-composer of the very successful album Last Call at Cafe Alto, which was full of several fresh, romantic jazz sounds. He took music very seriously as an art form and regularly attended McGill jazz courses. He loved performing for milestone occasions or in jazz cafes wherever he could, be it in Montreal or Argentina. He considered it a pleasure and a privilege to spread joy with his music. His sense of humor was contagious. I was in serious pain from laughing so hard whenever he went into his usual effortless comedy mode. He would also crack up laughing at his own humor, which would naturally prolong the happy mood. He loved life, traveled extensively, and attempted to live life to the fullest with his many eclectic interests. All who came in contact with Richard were captivated with his magnetic personality and found it hard to pull away from such stimulating conversation. Richard was always so helpful and thoughtful to others. Whenever I came to Montreal, he always went out of his way to take my daughter, brother, and myself around for appointments or just to entertain us. When my mother was very ill, Richard the lifesaver was on board to help. When his 85-year-old neighbor had a stroke, he would regularly visit her in hospital and be there for her son from Alberta. He was an adoring owner to 3 cherished cats and spared no expense for their finest care. Richard had a couple of medical problems of his own, but rarely verbalized them. Instead, he always showed concern with ailments of others and tried to help in any way. He was, for me and my family, a saving grace. If Jewish people had a saint, he'd be my Yiddish Saint Richard. Thanks. Heather.